Mediation is the best process at the shortest time at the lowest cost. But the one benefit that is most glaring, and to me it's not the most important, is the cost. Mediation can cost, $3,000 or $4,000 total for the client, for the couple. That's less than one retainer for one lawyer that you have to fill up multiple times. So when you think about getting divorced, you could pay a mediator $3,000 or $4,000 and you could be done with your entire agreement. So that's probably the most striking benefit. But to me, the best benefit is for the children.
I'll be interviewing divorce mediator Michael Cohen. Michael and I, we share a similar background as we were both from corporate America, and we fought for our children's rights to have a father. He's got a knack for finding common ground between warring couples. He earned his mediation certification from Northwestern University and aims to prevent divorces from turning into an all-out war. As a CPA, Michael, he excels at asset division, but his true focus is on the children affected by divorce. Unlike attorneys who can escalate issues, Michael aims to solve problems efficiently. We both regret not using a mediator during our divorces because the true cost is paid by the children. Michael, he can expedite the process in as little as 3 to 4 months, and he's fair, and he prioritizes the well-being of the children. He avoids legal jargon and keeps the cost low and is a strong advocate of fathers' rights. So if you want a fair and quick solution, Michael's your man. So let's meet him and let's start revving that engine. Seriously, I am really excited about speaking with you because I was telling my sweetheart that you have that unique combination of having human behavior and human emotions and law, which has absolutely way different things, right? What is mediation and what are the benefits?
Well, mediation is it's unlike litigation or a lawyer-led process. Mediation is where you hire a single person, a mediator. That mediator doesn't represent either party. The mediator is neutral, and the mediator facilitates questions. The mediation is really open-ended, and we just guide you. We know what decisions you have to make, and we help reframe comments so you both understand and hear each other and can make decisions together.
Do you guide them on the decisions? Like we have to think of this, we have to think of that?
We do. Mediators have to be creative, and I throw a lot of ideas at them. I don't want them to just make a decision and move on. I want them to consider every single alternative. I want them to think about that because sometimes life is more complex than a simple answer. And we try to think of all possibilities, and we build that into their plan.
What are the benefits?
When you litigate, you each have to pay your lawyer a retainer, say $3,000 to $5,000 each. You'll probably both fill it up twice, 3 times before you actually see any progress. So you're going to each spend $10,000 to $20,000 just to get started. When you mediate, the total cost could be $3,000 and you're done. So it's an incredible cost savings. When you think about a family, they have a lot of marital assets. Those should be used for their children, not for lawyers. So when you mediate, you save so much money because all of a sudden you're going from one house to 2 houses and you have children who have needs. So isn't it more important to keep those funds in the family so you both can build your own lives together as you go forward and be able to take care of your children? So that's like one of the most glaring benefits. But to me, the best benefit is the children. When you litigate, it's very, very hard for couples to preserve their ability to co-parent in a healthy way after the litigation. And the reason for that is because lawyers will tell you each, don't talk to your spouse unless I'm there, because they don't want you to agree to something that's not in your favor. And litigation can take 18 months. So could you imagine the stress and the tension that the kids see and hear and feel for 18 months when mom and dad aren't talking to each other and they're upset about what's happening in the legal process? When you mediate, it only takes 3 or 4 months maximum. And during that time, the mediator is telling the parents to work together on solutions. So the kids see something very quick. They see the parents talking to each other, and then they move on. There's very little baggage.
So people will say, stay married for the children. But if you're getting divorced, go through mediation for the children, basically.
Yeah, that's exactly right. When you mediate, you could do it in a very healthy way with little baggage in a short amount of time and have your kids unaffected by it.
I have a rather large Facebook group, right? And my hope is that you're going to be able to do a webinar as a group. Great group. They really do volunteer and try to help each other out. I asked for a referral list from their attorneys, like who's happy with their attorneys. Nearly 4,000 strong. That's how big the group is. 3 names came out. 3. And that was repeated requests. 3 names came out. Out of the three, two of them were mediators. One person put a litigating attorney. That has to speak volumes to me about how sad the system is.
I've met a number of good lawyers, but lawyers are the most expensive part of the entire divorce process. They charge the highest hourly rate of tax advisors, financial advisors, mediators, therapists. Their rates are exorbitant, and they're not trained to understand the nuances of emotions and finances. I can't tell you how many times I was in court where the judge and the lawyers didn't understand the finances. They made decisions not understanding it. When it comes to emotions, they're even more removed. They're not trained to do that. That's not in their makeup. So it doesn't make sense for me to hire the highest paid person to handle your emotions and your finances because they don't understand it. That's why you should work with somebody who's more empathetic, more understanding of the finances, and can help you with the emotions as you go through the process.
If it's so good, why isn't it the standard of care?
It should be. Number one, a lot of people don't know about it. A lot of people don't understand it. But there are also some reasons some couples can't mediate. So in order to mediate, you have to be able to communicate with each other. You have to be able to listen to each other. You have to have a desire and an ability to compromise, and you have to be transparent and honest with each other. So you can imagine there are some people in really bad divorces where those criteria don't exist. And in those cases, they might need a lawyer-led process.
Mediation, I was doing some research on it, and it got bigger for divorce specifically. It started to take off more in the 70s and 80s. Is that correct?
Yeah, it was. And it's really growing fast now. The more that I'm in this industry, the more I see, well, number one, I see lawyers dropping out of litigation, and they're moving towards what's called an amicable or a collaborative process. The shift has been away from litigation and contention and more towards amicable solutions.
Let's say I'm getting divorced, and I'm interviewing mediators. What should I look for?
Fit, trust. This is somebody that you're going to have intimate conversations about your life, your children, your finances. You want somebody that you're comfortable talking to and who you feel has similar life experiences. So you might want a mediator who's experienced divorce with children. He or she understands what you're going through. It would be outstanding if they understand finances as well. I'm a mediator who's earned his CPA, so I understand the finances. You have to trust this person, and you have to trust that this person's going to be impartial and help you both come to the best decisions for your family.
You live in Illinois, so does that mean that you can only work with clients in Illinois?
No, it doesn't. I do work with anyone across the country, and I get contacted by people in California, Louisiana, New Jersey. I'm working with 2 clients in Puerto Rico. So I'm able to, and I enjoy working with people across the country.
That's a misconception I had. I thought you could only stay with one state, but when you're certified, you could go throughout the United States.
Correct. When you're a lawyer, there's restrictions on what you can do. When you're a therapist, there's restrictions on what you can do, depending on where your license is. The courts want a lot of mediators because the more mediators there are that can help couples, the less conflict there is in the courts. So yes, we have to be attuned to the laws in each state, and that's something that I do, and I have a file for every state, and I update that regularly.
Just to be clear, when you say the courts, do you mean the judge?
Yeah, the court system. I mean, the whole family law system encourages mediation. It's only the few clients that really, they end up in court, but most people shouldn't end up there. And the court systems really don't want them there. They want them to figure out their problems on their own.
Yeah. If you guys fuck this up, fix your shit. Right? That kind of stuff. Right. Sorry, I'm a little blunt that way.
Hey, so, you planned your wedding together, you planned your marriage together, you planned your life together. If you're going to go your separate ways, why don't you plan it together?
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of emotions. I made a lot of mistakes during my divorce, right? And I went through litigation and so forth. And in the end, it came down to, I wish I would have used someone that's a mediator, but I always looked for a mediating attorney. That was a misconception of mine. I did not know back then that you didn't have to be an attorney to be a mediator. What are some other misconceptions of a mediator?
That's a big one. So let me just dive into that one a little bit. So not all mediators are lawyers, but a lawyer could mediate. And there's pros and cons of both. Like a lawyer who mediates has a bigger understanding of the law, but at the same time, they might not have as much latitude in helping you to make a decision because they might influence you by saying, if I was in front of a judge, this is what you're going to get. Whereas a mediator gives you more latitude to make decisions. I also believe that mediators who are not lawyers have more empathy and care for an outcome that's positive for the family. So I think there's a lot of benefits there. Another misconception is that you have to focus in your state. I do help clients across many states. And then another misconception might be that, well, if you're not a lawyer, how am I protected? When you mediate, you can bring a lawyer into a mediation session. You could also hire a lawyer on the side in what's called a limited scope review. And with clients where these are big issues, for example, alimony, if the husband has been the primary wage earner and the wife stayed home to raise the children and the husband makes a lot of money, alimony is a big question, and that's going to impact them for a number of years. So I might inform them, before we talk about alimony, this might be a good time for you both to connect with a lawyer and understand your rights and understand where you want to negotiate together on this topic, because this is going to be a big, impactful decision. So they could either do that on their own, or they could bring a lawyer into the session. So that's one area that they could always have legal review. The other thing is, when the mediation is finished, it always goes to a lawyer to draft up their legal papers. And that lawyer also reviews it to make sure it'll be approved by a judge. And then finally, it goes in front of a judge who reviews it. So you do have a lawyer review, you do have a judge review, and you have the option of bringing lawyers in during the process.
So let's say two couples right now, they both retained an attorney, right? Could they still go to see you at this point? Or they see you first?
I mean, I recommend they come to a mediator first, because there are some lawyers that will see this as income, and they will start filing and start a process and ask for a retainer. And once that happens, it's really hard to back out of. So I usually advise people to start with a mediator and escalate to a lawyer if they need it. But in my state and in most states, if you have children, the judge does not want to make decisions for your kids. So they're going to always tell you go to mediation for all of your parenting decisions. So you're going to end up with a mediator anyways. So my advice is always start with a mediator. You might find this process is working and you're able to make really good decisions together, and you don't need to hire a lawyer.
That would be the perfect world, right? But when I talk to guys, when they get to me, they've already retained an attorney. And it's like, okay, you could still go through mediation, but if they retain an attorney, they go to see you, you come up with solutions and so forth, they would just check it with the attorney that they retained. Is that how it works?
Yeah, I mean, any output that comes out of mediation can be handed to the lawyers. And I love that if a client comes and we do their entire parenting plan, and let's just say for the finances, they don't trust each other, but they want to work together for the kids. So let's just say they work with me, we do their entire parenting plan, and then I give them a document. It's called a memorandum of understanding. They walk into the lawyer's office and say, we've done our parenting plan. All we got to do is the finances. In my process, the kids are 70% of the work. So right there, they've cut out 70% of the legal fees. Now they could just deal with the finances. So any decision made in mediation can be brought to their lawyers and just written into their agreement.
And if they don't have an attorney, then at that point, they would get a limited scope review.
The limited scope review would be if they want to get advice before they make decisions. Yes. But after, let's say they didn't do that. When I give them their memorandum of understanding, they bring that to a lawyer to draft their formal divorce papers. And that lawyer will also schedule a hearing with the judge. The nice thing about mediation is usually you go in front of the judge one time. He reviews your agreement and you're divorced. When you litigate, you could be in front of the judge dozens of times, and think about the lost time from work, the stress of sitting there, the expense of paying a lawyer. It's not very fun.
No, it's terrible. As a matter of fact, I was doing research, right? I wanted to go to family law in Pasadena where I got divorced. And I wanted to go to the courtroom in family law. And I got there, and my God, talk about post-traumatic stress disorder. The energy is so horrible. And I was feeling terrible for these guys. It's really intense. Could you walk me through how the steps looks like?
Yeah, I mean, usually one of the spouses comes to me first to ask about, really to meet me, to understand mediation. If they like what they hear and they want to proceed, I tell them, talk to your spouse, let him or her know that I'm happy to talk to them. I'll do the same consultation because you both have to be comfortable. But then the other spouse will come to me And if they agree to work with me, what I like to do is start with all of the parenting decisions. To me, that's an area where I could look both parents in the eyes and say, I know you both want to do what's best for your children. Those discussions they're actually very healthy. They're usually focused on their kids. It's a good discussion. It's a good way to start. They start to get confidence in the process and they make good decisions for the kids. What I do is I try to meet with them for 60 to 90 minutes. And whatever we've decided, I'll draft their agreement that night or the next day. I'll send it to them to review. And the next week, the first thing we'll do is, okay, you've slept on it. Is there anything we need to tweak? Is there anything that you haven't thought about? Because that document is fluid throughout. So they'll always see what we agreed on. We'll constantly tweak it as needed. When we get done with all of the parenting decisions, I try to finalize that and put it on a shelf. Now, we could come back to it later, but I don't want the kids to become pawns in the financial discussions. So I try to help the parents understand, all right, we've done your parenting. Let's put that to the side. You've got your schedule, your parenting principles, your decision-making, etc. Let's put that away. And now let's talk about the finances. That's a little tougher discussion because that's more of I call it a tug of war. Like naturally, each person is trying to get the most they can, but I try to guide them to what's reasonable. The end result is they both need to have good homes that they could have for their children. When the kids are at dad's, the mom wants the dad to have a good home that the kids are comfortable at and vice versa. So that's kind of what we look at is how do we make sure they're both capable of creating good, healthy homes for their children. And then when that's finished, they'll review the entire MOU. We'll make any final changes. We'll sign it, and then they'll move on to a lawyer.
You mentioned it's fluid. So you make it clear to them that this is not a commitment, that they could change their mind, but that you're just trying to move and progress everything forward, correct?
Right. Nothing is really a committed decision until the judge approves it. So, and I make sure they understand that because that's important because every once in a while I'll work with a spouse. In fact, yesterday I had one say, takes me a while to take this in. And I said, no worries. Nothing's final until we're done. I just help them understand this is a living, breathing document, and you're going to think of things 2 weeks from now that you didn't think of today, and we're going to adjust it.
When I went to go to mediator for custody, it went like this. I show up, she shows up. She said, you could come see your kids whenever you want. And I said, that sounds to me like you're asking for 100% custody. And she said, well, you could just see them whenever you want. That's it. That's simple. I'm not going to let my kids stay at your place. I don't even know where you live or anything. And I said, that's unacceptable. That's bullshit. And she said, you hear that? My God, he's cursing. I'm scared. I need security. She was secured out. The mediation was done. Bam. What do you think?
I have a lot of couples where one spouse is very high level and doesn't want to commit to anything and says, we don't have to get that detailed. We'll just work it out. And that's not the way it should be because as a spouse leaves a marriage, like even if they're very friendly right now, things change. And you could imagine that why it changes. If one spouse starts dating, that introduces a whole element of emotion. The husband might feel, why am I paying you child support? You're living with your boyfriend and he's paying for your rent. Like this isn't fair. So the emotions change and things you agree to now and say, if it's not in writing, it could come back to haunt you. So I always encourage people to be as specific and thorough as possible. Now you could deviate from that down the line. You could put your agreement in the drawer and just be nice and work it out and come see them whenever you want to. But if you feel like you're not getting enough time with your children, then you have that document. You could go back to court and say this isn't being followed, but you need it in writing to begin with.
No, absolutely. That's the one thing I tell my clients. I say, you need this in writing, that you being able to see your kids. What if she gets a job somewhere else in another state? Oh, okay. Now you're screwed. There was nothing that took place. And the courts at this point, they've been staying with the wife, the mom so long that the guy's going to get hosed. And exactly. That's unacceptable. That you need to come. I don't care what it is, but you need to come with some kind of commitment, right? So.
Right. You have to negotiate for everything you need when you're making those decisions. But then once it's done, my hope is that you guys have learned to work together and you're just flexible together. But at least you have a basis to work through.
Can you walk me through the steps that a mediator works from your perspective? You mentioned the children, right? What if there's like absolutely no, like what happened with me? That my ex was like, yeah, you can see him whenever you come, whenever you want, but I'm not signing anything, any kind of custody to you.
I mean, there's a lot of tricks that a mediator will use. Like some that I would say is like one of my goals is to get you approved by a judge. And if we don't have details, the judge isn't going to approve it. So I'm sure that's not what you want. So let's spend a little time here and let's get something down here. I want you to have a document that a judge will read and approve. Because if not, we're not making any progress. That's one area. Another area is a lot of states, child support is based upon how many nights the children are with
Mhm.
each parent. So it's really important to come up with a number. So you actually need that. So if in your case, Renee, if your wife succeeded in saying, they'll stay with me all the time, come see them whenever you want. When you go through the child support calculation, it asks how many nights are they with each parent. And if you put 365 days with your former wife, your child support is going to be a lot higher. And that makes sense because she's paying their rent, their groceries, and all that stuff. But those are things that a lot of people don't think about, but they're very important.
Yeah, I that was an unacceptable. That I was willing to go to trial on that point. Fortunately, it didn't go to that, and I got what's standard in California, 35%. But then they ended up staying with me 100% of the time, which is good. So what you approach it from a custody point of view, and then you go into division of assets. Is that how it normally works?
Yeah. I mean, the only exception to that is the marital home. The process of resolving how to handle the marital home is a really long process. So before we start the parenting, I'll just ask some high level questions. Have you decided is one of you going to keep the home? Are you going to sell it? Based on those answers, there's some research I could do with them to help them move that process along because that process starts at the beginning and it takes all the way till the end of mediation. So I kickstart that process, but then we focus on the kids. Once we move into the financial areas, generally I start with maintenance. In my state where I work, most of my clients, maintenance is an input to child support. So we need to decide, is the husband or the wife going to pay spousal maintenance or alimony to their spouse? And what is that amount? We'll work through that. Then we'll look at child support because now we have the inputs. We know what we could do. We have the parenting plan, we have the maintenance, we could compute child support. And then lastly, we go through the division of assets. And that means your checking, savings, investment accounts, your credit cards, your debt, your property, your retirement accounts. It's the sad part of divorce because it's something that a couple has built their whole life and now
Mhm.
we're deconstructing it. So that part is very hard.
So you mentioned maintenance and child support. That's information that's rather state dependent. Do you have a system? Is there a way that you looked it up to that say like according to this would be this calculation? And in California, for instance, it's the DISO master, right? That's how the calculations are made. Do you have anything to like that as a mediator?
Yeah, before I start working with a client, like I'll research the state, and each state does have a child support and a maintenance calculator. Anyone listening right now, too, you could just Google your state child support calculator, and the state will have something there. So, I understand the inputs, and those are relatively straightforward to walk through, and anybody could take a look at what drives those calculations.
Who seeks you out first? Which gender, men or women?
It's both, but probably more women. I have sensed that it's probably two-thirds women and a third men. I don't know why that is, but I think the statistics show that usually it is women that proceed with the divorce process, and I don't know why that is.
I
But
do. You mean because they want it. 69% of women want the divorce, but if they have a college degree, it's 90%. They've thought about this. They did the research, and guys don't do research on this. Guys will cry, "I love my children," and they go to court and they're ill prepared. Why should you get primary custody? Well, I have more education. Well, I make more money. I mean, that's kind of what I hear when I prepare the guys. They need to get a lot more prepared. It's researched by the female. They start thinking about it for 2 years. They tell the husband, and then the husband, what we do is we stonewall, right? I don't have time for this shit. That's what we do. And next thing you know, the female will inform the male, we could do it this way, we could do it that way, et cetera, et cetera. And the guy is still in the shock of everything that's going on. So that's probably why. It's the same reason why they retain an attorney first and file first, I would say.
yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, one of the things that I do in my process too, the first two questions I ask a couple when they come to me is, are you sure, are you 100% sure that you both want to divorce? And are you both 100% sure that you've done everything you can to fix your marriage? Because if there's an imbalance there, and usually there is, because like you said, the woman might have been thinking about it for a long time and she's come to terms with it, but the husband hasn't. When you get into a mediation process, if one spouse wants it and the other person doesn't, that person might be dragging their feet a little bit, and it doesn't make the process move as well as it should. So sometimes it's worth investing a little time to come to that agreement together.
A lot of people will come to me for advice about that, like, should I leave my wife kind of thing. I don't fuck with family, I tell them. I just do not get involved. Until the decision is made, that's when I begin the coaching. But should I leave? I'm always, I definitely don't say, yeah, you leave her. I do give advice, though, as to try to continue and let them know what their life would look like if they tried to, if they were getting a divorce. What is going to look like.
I use a phrase, and divorce is not an easy button.
Marriage is not forever, but divorce is. I mean, that's a sad truth. The number one reason for divorce, people will argue, but according to social psychologists, is lack of commitment. Lack of commitment. And I will argue there's another reason, is unrealistic expectations.
Many people go through divorce. It's very stressful, but they find themselves being able to rebuild themselves, and you're older, wiser, smarter, and your lives can turn out very good. But you want to make sure you're doing it for the right reason and not regret separating the family.
Oh, completely. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes the kids are going to say about time when you say we're getting divorced. I mean, we've heard that, and so staying for the kids is not a realistic reason to stay married. And you're right. A lot of people do thrive after divorce, and that is actually what I do, because I wasn't always this good looking. I'm just totally messing around. Here's the thing. And I know I asked this earlier, but a couple, they each have retained an attorney, okay, and they're getting nowhere. Can they see you at this point, Michael?
They could. I've had couples call me and said, we litigated. I can't stand the process. I've paid $30,000. Nothing has gotten done. I'm so tired of this. And they jump out of their legal process and they start mediation. I would encourage everybody to consider that. Like, you would be amazed how much you could get done, especially if you started down the litigation process and saw how terrible it is. It is like nirvana when you're in a mediation session. I mean, in all honesty, the mediator will help you both feel comfortable. The mediator will put a North Star out there about your children and making sure you're both okay. And the mediator will translate and restate and reframe what each spouse is saying so the other person hears it in the most positive way, and the mediator encourages discussion. It's really endearing to me when I see couples who are divorcing physically lean on each other during the discussion, where they look at each other. Well, I was thinking this, what do you think? And it's really a heartwarming discussion, but that's what happens in mediation. The mediator helps you to talk to each other. If you think about conflicts that you've had with other people, you could be so angry and you guys are just going at it. Put a third person in the room. The temperature comes down. Everybody wants to look a little better and they state their positions a little more thoroughly. And the third person tries to understand each other. The whole temperature of the room comes down, and then the discussion becomes positive. And I would encourage anybody who's unhappy with litigation to talk to a mediator.
When you talk to your clients, is that going to be admissible in court if it ends up going that way? They don't want it to. That's what I'm trying to ask.
No, everything's confidential. So, in fact, I can't be called to testify about anything anybody said that's in the initial agreement. So we have discussions where you could just imagine one spouse is, well, I'll think about, you have that, I'm going to give you those days, and then they change their mind. That would be counterproductive if I had to go in court and say, well, she was willing to do that before, but now, so you should just allow it because she was there before. I mean, that's not right. I want an open discussion. I want open dialogue. But if they end up going to court and litigating it, I can't come and testify. None of the records I produce can be provided, and they're on their own, really to argue their cases.
Yeah, I'd advise that at that point, the person that doesn't want this to be said to just say, Your Honor, this was during mediation. It shouldn't be admissible in court.
Right. Mediation is like this separate carve out where you meet in private and you hunker down and you try to come to decisions. If you can't, then that stays in that private space.
I gave you my example of how bad my first mediation experience was. My second mediation experience was a completely different experience. I was pretty much shut down. I was like, this is so stupid. It's not going to work. I came in with absolutely no expectation. That's when I gained 35% custody through the mediator.
Mm.
And I was disconnected the whole time. And the mediator was the one that engaged me because I just did not believe in the system anymore.
Oh,
I was ready to go to court, and thank God for that mediator because she was the one. What do you think? How about this? How about holidays? How about and I'm not and I was like, oh my God, I'm getting chills right now just thinking about it. It was like God, I'm gonna get to see my kids finally after six fucking years, 6 months.
yeah,
I'm
that's
gonna get
awesome.
this. So I like right away bought some sheets and everything for them, and they stayed the night, and yeah. So it was so if it doesn't work the first time, I always encourage it to go again, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I always tell people there's four ways you can divorce. You can do it yourself, but that's really if you're just recently married, no children, not your finances are complicated, you can do it yourself. Um, the next step up is mediation, extremely cordial. It's a very healthy process, not expensive. Definitely invest in it because whatever value you get could move on to the next process, but definitely try it. It's the healthiest, cheapest way. If for some reason you can't mediate, there's something called the collaborative process.
Mhm.
That's lawyer led, but it's more amicably, it's done in private. That would be the next step. Worst case, when both spouses just want to hurt each other, I mean, you have to litigate, and that's just a terrible process. But that should always, always, always be the last choice.
But we were supposed to do a collaborative. You're correct. It was supposed to be done that way. My ex-wife, she was the one that informed me that we could do mediation, or we could do that. That was her first, and the next thing I know, I got this, and she told me we're doing a collaborative. So okay, so I got a golden retriever as an attorney, thinking it was going to be collaborative, and she hired a damn pit bull. And I literally had nightmares, not about my ex-wife, but about her attorney. That's how bad it was. She bullied me, and it was scary.
You know,
So,
picking a professional is one of the most important things you do. And if you're not going to mediate and you're going to work through lawyers, what you just described is one of the most important steps people take. And every lawyer will tell you they're amicable, but you really need to look at their case count. Are they in court all day? Then they're a litigator. And you
mhm.
don't want a litigator because a litigator is going to find the conflict, drive the conflict. The fees are going to go up. It's not going to be a healthy process. There are some lawyers that have stepped away from litigation and all they do is amicable law. So if you need a lawyer-led process, make sure you pick a lawyer that is amicable and make sure you both are picking lawyers that are amicable because they will work together to get you through it in a healthier way.
You're primary in Illinois, and then somebody from Texas reaches out to you. How do you prepare for that?
I
Mhm.
spend some time, if I haven't researched the state already, I'll go ahead and research the state and help them understand how it influences their decisions. You know, I'll always inform them if you want to work with someone in state, you can. But my specialty is I have my CPA, understand your finances, and I'm also very driven to help you create good parenting plans. And being a parent is universal in any state. So coming up with parenting plans with somebody who cares about your children, who coaches you on co-parenting during the process is very valuable. You know, I help them understand what the laws of Texas are in that instance, and that's what we work around when we make their decisions.
I look at custody exchange, right? The website, and Texas is 33%. Men will get some kind of custody. Now, there's times that they'll want the majority of custody, and I try to keep them level-headed. Like, okay, that may not happen. First of all, your hours of work. Second of all, the resources you have is going to take care of you. It's Texas. It's not a 50% custodial state. It's a third. Is that way that you work with them?
Yeah, I find that at the very beginning, each spouse makes demands. I'm going to get the kids all the nights, or I'm keeping the house, or I'm not paying you a penny of child support, or you're not getting anything from me. And I let them get that out of their system. And then I tell them, I said, you guys, let's work through the process because you don't understand it. And once you're educated, you can make better decisions. So a lot of people make those demands, and I often have to coach the other spouse. Just let it run off your skin because it's not relevant. They don't know what they're talking about. I'll help educate you. That's not how the system works.
Do they feel that you're taking sides?
No, no. In
Mm.
fact, The way I view my role, the way I
No,
view my role. Oh, go ahead.
no, sorry. Did they feel like you're taking sides? Because they know, like I have that freedom to say, look, man, I'm on your side, which is true, but I have to be realistic here and set expectations. You're a different messenger. So that's
Yeah,
what I'm
I
wondering.
I can't take sides, but I feel like it's my responsibility that they're both educated before they make decisions. So if
Mhm.
they come into me and the husband says, for example, I'm going to give you $100,000 a year in alimony, I'm going to be like, oh, that's really generous of you, but let's just look at the calculation and the formula. Just so you know, the wife might be thinking, shut up, like I want that $100,000. But that wasn't an educated decision. So like what I want to do is say, this is what it is. Like you can give $100,000, but this is what the guidelines are, or things like that. So I sometimes it might come across that I'm taking sides because what I bring up might sway a decision. But my
Mhm.
role is to make sure they're educated decisions. So I try to educate them before they finalize the decision.
I love that you said that because I was trying to figure out how to ask you that same very question. So thank you for
We're on the same
answering.
page.
Yeah, right here, man. Okay, so the husband or the wife, they come to you, they want to know about your practice, and let's say that the husband, he doesn't want a divorce, and he doesn't want it to get expensive, so he comes to you and he talks. But the wife, she's pretty much hell bent on litigation, right? She's like, no, I'm getting an attorney or whatever. Do you coach either the female or the male on how to speak to their exes on why mediation would be, and how does that sound like? And please speak
Yeah.
slowly because I want this to be clear.
No, I do. I first, let's put it in that example. The husband wants to mediate because that's
Mhm.
kind of the example that I had with a very good friend of mine who I used to work with. She was hell bent on hurting him, and he understood that he was going to be generous and just wants to do it amicably for the kids. So the first thing I did was coach him. Like, let me help you understand the benefits of mediation so you could help her understand. And you're welcome to share my website with her and let her know I'm happy to talk to her about it. But I would coach him on, this is best for your kids, and this is why. This is the maximum it will cost you. You guys can make all your own decisions. You don't have to sit in court and have it publicly aired. You guys will, your kids will be healthier as a result of this process than if you litigate. And I try to coach him on how to talk to her. And in some cases, in this case, he was successful in having his wife call me. So I was able to talk to her myself and helped her understand. In the end, she was hell bent on destroying him. So I got an opportunity to try to sell it to her, but she was angry and she just wanted to hurt him. And it was unfortunate. But in other cases, after I talk to the spouse, they understand it better. And once they get to talk with me, they understand and they get develop some trust and they give it a try. And that's where it's really wonderful because in my mind, I know what they walked away from and I understand the value they're getting. So it feels good.
Yeah, well, and you got a very kind smile, so you gained that trust right away. I mean, you gained my trust almost instantly when we talked.
That's been my personality throughout. And I like bringing people together and find win-wins. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. And there's a lot of ways to make good decisions when you're divorcing.
Do you come up with ideas like maybe what if they did this and you do this? Can you come up with that, or is that do you leave it to them?
Oh no, I do. I've got a very thorough process. So like for every item, I've got 5 to 8 different questions to help them make sure they're thinking about it the right way. So they might say, "Oh yes," and I'll say, "Well, what about this? And what about that? And what about, what if this happened?" And I want them to think through that because I'm not going through a checklist just to get answers. I want
Mhm.
something that works, that they could live with, that works with their lifestyle and what they need.
Yeah. How about as far as working with a client that has temporary restraining order in the past or domestic violence charges in the past? Do you work with any of them?
I haven't. There's one couple that I'm talking to where the husband had a restraining order against him, and the wife still wanted to work with me, and she was waiting for him to be released. And then she wanted to go through mediation more for the cost savings because they didn't have a lot of funds, and she thought this would be the best way for her to provide for her family. But we are still waiting for him to be released. I did speak to him, and he seemed to suggest a desire to do things amicably.
N2DV.org did a study and found that 80% of restraining orders are fabricated. And this is domesticviolence.org. To me, I'm dumbfounded how easy it is for a guy to get a temporary restraining order. I'm fortunate that I never had that, but it could have been used against me hardcore. And I just got lucky that way. I got fortunate. Like many of these guys, I don't have a violent bone. It's not that I would ever touch or insult or harass, but it breaks my heart because it's a technique called the silver bullet method. And I don't know if you've heard of it.
It's terrible. It's bad enough going through a divorce, but if you have to go through a divorce and the law isn't even letting you see your children, or it has to be supervised, you feel about, this high, this tall. It's terrible. So you have to remember, if you're going through divorce, to put your best foot forward, to write every text and email as if it's going to be seen by a judge, because those behaviors do exist and people keep documentation. So whatever you say, write, text can be brought up, and it could limit the ability for you to have a favorable outcome. So it's unfortunate because you're full of emotion and you want to respond, but it's just going to work against you.
Yeah, I tell my clients, remain presidential. You got to be presidential here.
The way I say it is, you kind of have to split yourself into two people. You can have conflict with your spouse, work that out privately, but when the kids are involved, you have to be a parent. And being a parent means complimenting their mom or their dad, say, "Oh, thanks for having them over." Oh, and build them up. You have to be a separate person, and it's really hard to do that, but it's best for the kids, and it won't get you in trouble.
In your practice, what would you say is your forte? What are you particularly strong in?
I have a lot of empathy for people. I understand what they're going through. I was divorced myself, so I understand the impact on my own children. So I'm very passionate about finding solutions for the kids so that the kids love both of their parents and the parents feel they have the best relationships they can with their children. That's my strength. But I also have a CPA, and a lot of mediators don't have that. So I understand the finances, and I'm able to help parents and spouses work through that. So that's something that's more of a competitive advantage, because a lot of mediators don't have that. But I would say I lead with my heart. I lead with empathy. My goal is for them to co-parent in a very healthy way with their children. That's really my goal.
Do you ever feel like you are here to represent the kids? Because that would be my North Star, right? Like when it comes to it, it's the kids. It's the kids. So.
Yeah. In my divorce, I have 3 children, 2 boys and a girl. My former wife alienated my daughter from me, and it's probably the biggest pain that I felt, and that's why I'm doing this. So that is the North Star for me. I talk about North Stars a lot because I try to put them out there for the couples of what we're trying to achieve and get them there. But it's always about the kids.
You mentioned people both lose, and I couldn't agree with you more. There's no winners when it comes to divorce and loss, right? I won. No, you didn't. You didn't really win. You just didn't lose. That's the philosophy that I have. It's like you just didn't lose. Now it's another thing winning in other ways in life and experience. When I divorced my first wife, she and I would get along really well, but during the divorce we went to war. And I remember looking at her when we did get divorced, and I looked at her and I said, "Don't you feel like a fucking loser?" And she just, "Why would you say that?" She just started bawling and crying, and it's just the shame you feel. It's tangible.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things that I really regret is because our divorce was so bad, like simple things like, a concert that the kid's in or a basketball game, like afterwards when your child's done and they come out, like my children always had to go see their mom first and take a picture or get their flowers, and then they'd come over to see me. And it just put a lot of stress on them. And I always saw parents who would just greet their kids together and share in that joy. And I was always so jealous of them. And I thought that was like the perfect standard. And it's really hard to get there, but it's really hard to get there if you litigate. It's almost impossible because you tear each other apart. But when you mediate, you understand that, and those lessons are built in. And my goal is for parents not to add that extra stress to your kids after the divorce. Like, do the best thing for your kids. It takes a little bit of emotional maturity to get there. And unfortunately, it takes both parents being able to elevate their emotional maturity, because if one does and the other one doesn't, there's still conflict. So it's a really tricky situation, but I've always been jealous and envious of couples who could put that aside and just raise their emotional game and do the right thing for their children.
How are you and your wife, your ex now?
It's really frustrating. She alienated my daughter. Neither one of them responds to any messages I send. It's just awkward. And my kids feel it. They know it, which I don't like that I'm very unhappy about that. My oldest son is getting married next weekend and, we'll all be together. So obviously that will be stressful. And it bothers me that my son who's getting married has to be in the middle of that. I've always taken the high road. It's still not comfortable and it's very painful. It shouldn't be that way. So that's the energy I take with my clients. Like I try not to share too much of my life, but I want them to understand, like when your kids are 5 and 6, like, yes, you should make decisions now, but they're going to graduate, they're going to get married, life is going to go on, they're going to have kids. Do you want to add stress to their life throughout their life? Is that the gift that you want to give to your kids? No, just figure out a way to work together, communicate, be good co-parents, and remove that so your kids could just be kids and go through life.
That doesn't have to be added in this video, just to let you know. And thank you very much for your sincerity on that part.
No, that's okay. You could include that if you need, or if you think it's valuable.
Yeah, that's what I tell guys. A lot of guys will say that's what my kids are my priority, which of course they are. And I live for my kids. And I'm thinking, yeah, that's not exactly what you need to do. You need to live for yourself, to find your purpose, to find out why you're here, your calling. What is it Mark Twain said? It's the two most important days of your life are going to be the day you're born and the day that you find out why you're born.
Yeah, I love that. I love that thing.
Tell me about your practice. Specifically about your practice, like what is your mission?
I used to work in the corporate world, managing teams and doing finance stuff and helping people develop. But I was able to pivot my career to do this. This is something I've always wanted to do. When I sat in the courtroom, I knew I wanted to make a difference for people going through this. So I took vacation from my job. I got certified in mediation, and then I slowly built my practice. And this is a passion project. So my practice is all based around helping people. So I give extensive free consultations. I'll talk to people as often as they want to help them understand. I do a lot of education because I want people to be educated on the 4 different ways they can divorce. And if they need a lawyer, I'll recommend a really good lawyer for them. If they could do it themselves, I'll guide them in how to do that. I want people to understand their options instead of blindly just picking one and moving forward. So I'll talk to people. I've got a number of, I guess I'll call it potential clients that I'm still talking to. Once they come to me, they get 120% of me. So I'm very proactive. I'm very interested. I want to understand their family. I want to make sure they have a good outcome. My goal is to make sure that they are both happy with the outcome, their children are comfortable, and that they could be good co-parents. So that's my mission, is really to educate people and to help their families.
What percentage of clients would you say come to a conclusion?
Oh, most of them do, probably 90%. Yeah, maybe more than that.
About your practice, how does it work? Is it per session? How much do you charge? How does all this work?
So consultations are all free. Currently, right now, I've got a cap on my services of $5,000. I mean, that could change down the road, but right now I'd like to give couples the comfort that they're not going to pay more than that. And I'll be honest with you, I've never billed anyone more than $3,000 because we get it done. We're very efficient. We go through the process very well. So generally, I've had couples where there were very long sessions and a lot of complex issues. And on the last session, I pull up how much it's cost them. And I said, wow, it's only been $2,000. I said, I'm like, this is a deal. I'm like, so it's usually in that $2,000 to $3,000 range. I cap it at $5,000 because I want them to have the comfort that they could talk about issues as long as they want. I don't want them to be watching their watch. I want them to be able to think through everything and sleep on it and come back to it. I want them to have good decisions in the end. So that's why I put a cap on it, because I will work as long as I can with them to make sure they come to the right outcome. So that's generally how I do it. I bill by the hour. I collect after each session, and I just watch the cap, but we've never hit it. We've never even come close to it.
Do they give you a retainer at first, or it's just straight out by the hour?
No retainer at all. There's no commitment. That's why I always tell couples, try mediation. It's very inexpensive to try it, and you'll probably find it'll work for you.
And how many sessions does it typically take for them to get to?
If they don't have any children, it's just the finances, it could be 1 or 2 sessions. If they have children, it could be 6 to 8 sessions.
If they agree what's next? They just take it to court? Do they take it to attorney? Do they give it to what's next?
Yeah, so I give them, it's called an MOU, a memorandum
Mhm.
of understanding. It's really just a summary of everything that they've agreed to. I write it up real nice and it's all
Mhm.
organized for them. Um, they bring it to a lawyer. The lawyer has to draft the official documents that the court needs. So I'm not going to say it's a cut and paste, but it's basically a cut and a paste. But they also have to make sure it's in the right format for the court. And they might find some other things that they might expand upon, what have you. But then the lawyer will schedule a hearing with the judge with their divorce papers. The judge will review it, usually one meeting, and then they're done.
How long does the process take?
I always tell people plan on 3 to 4 months, start to finish, between myself and a lawyer. If they want to meet more regularly, we could get it done in 2 to 3 months without a problem.
2 to 3 months. And litigation, mine was over 2 years. My first one, my second one
Yeah.
was under 2 years.
And Renee,
But
that's
just
2 years of your life you're not going to get back, right? I mean,
yeah, I tell the guys, prepare for the long game here. You have to be prepared psychologically for this and know, because there's divorce fatigue that takes place.
oh, divorce becomes the only thing on your mind, and the rest of your life just stops. It's just so stressful and overbearing. In my state, in the courtroom, it takes 1 to 2 years, and most of them finish in 18 months. And it's just a terrible 18 months.
It's needless. It's unnecessary. In the end, my kids would be so much better off if we would have done it without attorneys. I mean, we spent between her and I, yeah, it was definitely 6 figures in attorney fees.
I mean, that's a college education right there.
Yeah,
Why
yeah,
why pay a lawyer when you'd rather just put your kid through college?
yeah. Now they have to go to community college. I can't afford to snap. I can't afford.
I mean, I do tell people, like, seriously, when they got married, they planned their wedding together, they planned their life together. When they get divorced, why do they want to just give it to somebody else to decide for them? Like,
Mhm.
do it yourself. Try to do it yourself, because, if you could stay on the same page, you could make every decision yourself in a short amount of time at minimal cost.
How could somebody get a hold of you now?
Yeah, so my website is very easy. It's Michael's, plural, michaelsmediation.com, or my phone number is 224-544-9990. And I'm happy to talk to you, understand your situation, and help you get educated and help you understand what your priorities are. And if you need to see a lawyer based on what I hear, I'll let you know. And I'm happy to refer you to some good lawyers. But otherwise, I'm happy to just talk to you and educate you and help you get prepared for what's to come.
michaelsmediation.com.
Correct.
We need more guys like you, more people like you, not just gender, more people like you. And I'm hoping that you become the standard of care.
I appreciate it. And what you do too, coaching, is so valuable. The divorce team that people put together is so important. So it's not just me. A coach is really important too. There's other professionals too. There's certified divorce lending professionals that are critical when we're talking about the marital home. And the nice thing is they can't charge for their time because it's unfair lending practices. So, I usually bring one of them into a session too to understand the mortgage implications. There's a lot of other professionals that are part of the team. And nowadays, more people are thinking about it in a more amicable way, which is phenomenal.
I always get that knee-jerk reaction of get a pit bull, talk to your attorney, and I'm like, find a solution. And unless it's unjust, then go to the justice system, the so-called justice system.
At least give it a try to see if you could find a way through a mediator. And you may be thinking, there's no way we could come to decisions. Try it with a third party, independent, impartial person in the room with you, and just see how it works, because the dynamics do change.
Did I miss anything? Anything else that you'd like to?
No, I mean, first of all, we met recently, and I love what you're doing. I love your style. I love you resonate so well for men. I think you tell it like it is. And I think, I listened to some of your prior recordings. Your messages are phenomenal. You're hitting on all the right buttons. So, like, the people who are listening to you are fortunate. I enjoy what you're doing, and I think you're doing a service to people too.
Thank you. So are you. You know what's funny? I always get people like, I would have thought you'd be a misogynist. I'm like, no, I'm harder on the guys than the women. That's like the biggest feedback, like commentary that I get. I thought that you'd be a misogynist. I thought you don't like women. I'm like, no, that's not at all. It's my fuck up too. I'm twice divorced for a reason. I had a lot to do with this. I made some bad decisions. We have to take ownership for that.
Yeah, I mean, Do I wish I was divorced? No. I mean, I never wanted this for my kids, but sometimes life happens, and yeah, you do the best you can and try to enjoy life.
Thank you, Michael. Gentlemen, I can't reiterate enough what Michael said about building your divorce team. When we get divorced, we limit our team and investment to a single lawyer for a legal system that's pretty much set in stone. One attorney, that's it. 20 grand, it comes and goes, and you get nowhere. Now that's a motherfucking expensive mistake because you're giving them way too much power as attorneys. They escalate divorces, all in the interest of your self-interest. In the end, after thousands of dollars, it was a mediator after all that got my ex to concede to custody. Until recently, I had no opinion on divorce attorneys. I didn't like neither one that I hired of mine, but I felt I just hired incorrectly. But they're eunuchs, and even my first wife, the one I talk about hiring a pit bull, my first wife herself said she wouldn't rehire her. I was outsmarted by my then wife who hacked my email and knew my attorney's communication. Build your team. Let me help you. That's what a divorce and recovery coach does. We approach your divorce from every angle and find the best fit for you, the least expensive solution, mediation to litigation, all down to your recovery and getting you out there again and finding them balls of yours. If you're interested in my coaching, set up a free consultation and be prepared for your life to change, but this time for the much better. So click on the link in the comment section underneath and set something up. Let's start rebuilding your life and your team today. Thank you very much. What is mediation exactly?
We're not recording this for yours. This is just a conversation with us.
No, right? This is actually, I was hoping it'd be recording. Do you want to start all over?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was going to be an introduction. I'm sorry. I was just casually, yeah, let's start over.
You're like, dude, you should know this shit.
I'm glad I asked. We would have been done, and I'd be like, are we ready to start?
Yeah, no.
But to me, the best benefit is for the children. So when you litigate, you know what? My dog wants to go out. So can I?
Oh, yeah.
She's just barking at me. Just give me 1 second.
It's all good. It's all good. That's awesome. I'm keeping this here. I'm not editing this part out. That's awesome. No, it's okay. I'm not editing this part out, buddy. I'm gonna put like in there 5 minutes later or 10 minutes later. No, right. I'm kidding. All right, so let's go to still question two.